Hello, this morning I'm going to talk to you about positive strategic leadership as a key driver for success. Before I do that, I want to just latch on to what Colonna was referring to, and that is these accreditations. Those are, he spoke about the association of MBAs, EQUIS is an European accreditation body, and that AACB is an American accreditation body. And Stellenbosch University is the first university in Africa that got what they call a triple crown accreditation. It is the absolute minimum of the business schools in the world that got that. And in South Africa, there are at the moment just 2 of the schools who've got triple accreditation. So we are part of a global club, and where our standards been set by a global agenda, and we are under audit and scrutiny every 3 to 5 years. And later this year, we EQUIS will come and audit the business school again. Why is that important? Because that is giving you a standard that whatever you receive at the business school is of an international standard. The other thing that I want to allude to is this, that the business school this year is 50 years old. So it's not as if we're sort of doing this from last year. It's not a startup business anymore at all. And the school went through various phases of reinventing itself, and of course through various different leaders over that period. And the school is at the moment in a period where we're going to get a new head of the business school, a new director for the business school, and that is Professor Piet Nordier. Some of you might have taken notice of that. And in my mind, Piet Nordier is one of the foremost thinkers on business and business in society and on ethics of business. And we are really looking forward to his contribution to Stellenbosch Business School. He's at the moment a vice rector at the Metropolitan University in Port Elizabeth, the Mandela Metropolitan University, and he's coming as the director of our business school. So, what's the space? I'm sure you're going to hear a lot about him talking from that platform. Okay, I'm going to sort of talk then about this in these sequences. The landscape of strategic leadership, and then I'm going to sort of set the scene for you that we're living in a different world. And I'm specifically going to highlight to you how the nature of big organizations as we know it are changing. And that's got implications. Because all of us, or most of us, let me rather say that, has grown up with this ideal that big business is how we all should be. And that big business is the answer for the world. And I'm going to show to you that that landscape is changing drastically. Then I'm going to talk about leadership, but from an abundance perspective, which is a different angle from what you would hear normally about leaders, because the paradigm about leadership is normally that it's for a selected few, and that everybody can't be a leader. And I'm putting a different perspective on that. Then briefly I'm going to talk, just give you an examples of what successful companies do when they take on this leadership paradigm, how they think about business, because I think that's fundamental, and how we position to do business. And I will also then touch on in leadership, how we need to change our thinking to be successful. Then refer to shifts when you are moving from a functional position or a functional thinker to a more general management position and a more general leader position. What are those shifts? And then concluding by saying, well, if that is how the world is changing and that is the new world, well, talking you through a scenario of how does it look like, how will businesses look like in this new world, from start to finish, and also sort of talk a little bit about then the new technologies that's available to assist us as business people. Now, please don't think that I am so smart to think up all these things. I'm just very privileged to travel a lot, to be exposed to a global agenda. And at least part of what I'm sharing this morning, I picked up 10 days ago at an international colloquium in Rotterdam, where the most prestigious European professors was together speaking about business, and I've made summations from that. This concept you most probably know. They say we live in a VUCA world. VUCA standing for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Now, of course, all this material is available. I've already passed on to Kulani the PDF, so that will go on to the USB website soon. But he's also free to distribute it to all of you. So don't worry about the notes, just listen for the story. So yes, we live in a different world, and they call it this acronym. Now, I don't know about you, but this makes me uncomfortable. I mean, this don't sound like inviting. It sounds to me like trouble is. So let's unpack a little bit of this uncertainty, and let's see specifically from a large corporation point of view. So, where do we come from? We come from the corporate society, the years 1950 to 1990. In the industrial enterprise, the structure which actually underlies all society can be seen. So it is the era of the industrial enterprise, the big organization. That's Drucker saying that membership in the modern corporation becomes the single strongest social force shaping the careers of members, and of course everybody, that sort of set the pattern that everybody wants to belong to a big corporation and have that certainty. And then large organizations have absorbed society. So these corporations are so big and they have such a big influence. And then at the same time, we see the following happening. So Kodak as a product has been with us for a very long time, but it isn't with us anymore. Then even the flip camera, which is the middle device in those pictures, that had a very positive reign and impact, and within that period of 2007 to 2011, it built up a market share of 30% for this type of cameras. And then you read the following, that there are now 5 alternative devices to replace the now dead flip camera. So you now see products come and go within a 5-year period. And of course, on the right-hand side is this cell phone. You can do everything now. And yesterday on the plane here, I saw that there's a new Samsung now out with a special device of a camera on it. And that device, that camera can have like a picture quality of 20 pixels. I mean, at the moment, it's about 10 in most of the smart phones. So it's really high quality, and it's got a specific, better zoom lens quality than this model. So something is happening. Things are changing much quicker than what we've sort of ever seen before. So if that is the case, let's then sort of look at 5 phenomena around big organizations. And we need to sort of ask the question, are these things still true? So the corporate-centered view of society, where the corporation makes tangible products, where the corporate ownership is broadly dispersed, where corporate control is concentrated, where the corporations aim to grow bigger in assets and number of employees, and where corporations live for a long time. And let's see, well, whether these things are still true. And in no surprise, I think you would now see that I argue that none of these are true. So, the opportunities of shifting from manufacturing to services. And the largest employers have shifted from manufacturing to retail and other services. And there you have a list of the 10 largest US corporations in the period 2060 to 2010. And you would see the chains in the list. And that list is now dominated by retailers and service-oriented companies. And the fact that Walmart, the largest retailer in the world, employs as many Americans as the 20 largest manufacturers combined. So typically there's a shift that is happening. So if you are even big, it seems as if the big has become services and definitely retail. Well, if I look at the way that we drive from mid-Durban to the south here, I mean, we've passed 3 malls already, which tells you the dominance of retailing in today's world. The second one that is also sort of dwindling is corporate ownership is more concentrated and non-personal. So the intent was always for the corporate to have a variety of shareholders, and what we now see is that shareholding become more and more in the block form. Why is that? Because you've got these mutual funds and you've got these electronic instruments, and you've got these investment companies who are making investments into companies, and they are holding larger and larger blocks of shareholding. And last evening on the plane, I was reading in the Financial Mail, a listed company like Second Yalo, 80% of its shareholding is held by 10 people. So this thing of a diverse shareholding base isn't anymore. And I don't know who of you have heard about BlackRock. Most probably very few. I mean, I saw this, I didn't know about BlackRock. BlackRock is the largest shareholder of 1 in every 5 US corporations. 4.3 trillion in assets, owns 5% of over 1,800 US corporations. It's the single largest shareholder in 1 every 5 corporations, including Exxon Mobil, Chevron, Philips, Apple, GE, AT&T, all those big names, Citigroup. And we don't know this. So this thing of a listed company where there's this variety of investors, that's not true anymore. It's becoming more concentrated, and also, as the heading is saying, more non-personal. That's got big implications. Because we don't know even who, well, if we Google, of course, we will know who's the chairperson of BlackRock. But previously, these people were much more visible and part of the corporate environment. And that's got implications. The third pattern that's emerging is that there's a more diversity in the corporate control, so in the board. Previously, a few people who knew each other were sitting on these large companies' boards, and there was a predictability in their behavior. So the banks has always been very prominent on those boards through different associations. But here on the right-hand side, I've sort of cut and paste for you South Africa's sort of diversity trends. It's not only anymore CAs on the boards. There's also a drastic increase of females on South African boards. And on average, board members of South Africa, 20 largest companies, they sit on 14 other boards, where in Europe, the comparable figure would be about 8. So board representation is also changing, and that is also causing where there was previously sort of a single focus, now much more multiple focus, and it isn't concentrated anymore as the past patterns. And of course, that then gets sort of onto the strategy. So corporates are not job creators anymore. The orientation towards share price leads companies to adopt strategies and structures that value the financial markets. And market-approved strategies now includes pervasive outsourcing, and this is also called the nightification of corporations. So where the corporate is just sort of doing a central middle piece, but all of the others are done somewhere else. Employment minimization, domain shopping for tax havens. So these corporates are not even in the countries anymore where they've originated. They put themselves up in very lucrative tax structures in other domains, and then of course the famous stock buybacks to increase the demand for the stock. And that led to a widespread orientation towards share price, and of course that then have some pathologies and some effects for us as either investors or stakeholders. So, let's take a case study. Sarah Lee, it is one of the top 50 Fortune 500 listed American companies. It holds brands like Wonder Bra, perhaps you should take a notice of. Darwin Edwards, that's a very well-known coffee brand. So they have holdings in various lines of businesses with well-known consumer brands. And on that graph, you see what happens to their employment over time. And why is that? Because the corporation is changing, and it's now saying that our primary purpose is to create long-term stockholder value. And companies that harbor the most profits for the least assets. That became the mantra. And in 2012, after 15 years of shareholder-orientated restructuring and spin-offs, what was left of Sara Lee was a split between the Hillside brand and the coffee brands. So that's the pattern what we see in large corporations. Another example, two different type of companies, Kroger, and Kroger is a retail-orientated company. It's the second largest general retailer after Walmart, and they have 2,400 stores. They have 375,000 employees. They make a very decent profit, and their market capitalization is $23 billion. At the same time, we have Twitter. It's got a minimal turnover, 2,700 employees, a negative net income, and the same market capitalization. And the question is, whose management has created the So clearly how these corporations are being evaluated by the market is changing. So the lifespan, the fifth one that is changing of corporations are decreasing, and here you see the Dow Jones Industrials in 1987, and then those with the red lines gone by 2013. And this is the sort of constant pattern of the lifespan of corporations. So that then leads us at the moment to the conclusion that this thing of the big corporate as the answer for economic growth is not going to do. Because clearly this pattern is changing. And to think that this is where we should put our energies on and this is where we should focus on is clearly sort of under scrutiny, and we should reconsider it. And that's why I'm glad to be here with you, because I know this is not what you want. So let's then sort of change the tack a little bit and start talking about abundance and positive thinking as key ingredients of how we think about this VUCA world that we live in. Because that reality of that change and that uncertainty, that's not going to go away. That's our context. But how do we react on this? And the first one that I want to sort of start with is this concept of self-awareness, that if we want to embrace an abundance perspective on leadership, that journey doesn't start anywhere else than with ourselves. And self-awareness is the basis for personal growth. And looking into the mirror, thinking about ourselves, that's the job. And the most basic question we can ask ourselves and answering it repetitively at various stages of our lives, who am I? That is a very fundamental question. And then there's this last one. The last thing that the fish knows about is water. Because we become so immersed in our environment and we are so stressed and exposed to all these changes that we don't see anymore what's around us. And in that way, we also lose ourselves. And there's a wonderful video that's available on YouTube with the name "This is Water." Please go and search for this. This is water. And you would understand what it means to live with self-awareness. Self-awareness doesn't start as a theoretical concept. It is a very practical concept of how it influences my daily life and my thinking and reaction on the environment. So, from where I sit, it seems as if good leadership matters. Because good leadership solves the problem of organizations, it leads to organizational success, as well as financial success, and of course the social well-being of people. Bad leadership causes misery for people, and the reaction of that is high turnover, insubordination, sabotage, and all other sort of negative activities. Many employees report that their immediate supervisor is the most stressful aspect of their daily job. So let us not sort of talk about leadership in a theoretical context. Leadership is what we exposed to every day. Who's got the biggest impact of that? Our immediate supervisor. The most common complaints from direct reports concerns managers' unwillingness to exercise authority. So that authority that managers do have to make decisions, to take actions, but they're clearly not doing that. And managers tyrannizing their subordinates. And that's of course the old style of, I will tell you what to do, and if you don't do that, I will do a lot of other things to force you. So, leadership matters. Research has shown that top managers account for 14% of the variance in organizational performance. So, not only the immediate supervisor, but also then the leader, the top leadership of the firm, that they have a substantial influence on the performance of the firm. Apart from that, Drucker told us a long time ago that we've got very high expectations of leaders. Leaders are supposed to lift people up with their visions and their insights, to raise a person's performance to higher standards, and to build our personality beyond the normal limitations. So we've grown up with these high expectations on leaders. So if we aspire to be leaders, then for me that starts off with our mindset, how we think. And if there is one pattern that I repeatedly see of successful leaders, is this pattern. They think of possibilities. Their primary thinking pattern is an upward spiral thinking pattern, where they try to build and where they try to create with whatever they have. And they prevent this negative cycle of talking about what we don't have, or go into this disempowering discussions of how bad things are. Because the negative cycle don't get you anywhere. It just gets you to a place of depression. And it gets you to a place of no hope. So in the first instance, this ability to, in every conversation, in every interaction, to ask, what are the possibilities? What do we have that we can use? And doesn't matter how little that is, because that is what we have, and that is what we use. So success requires two things: a picture of the future and principles for achieving this. So if we talk about leadership, it's not just about success. It's also principle-based. It does matter how we do things. It does matter what we do. There are constraints in terms of moral boundaries. There are things in this day and age that's acceptable, and there are things that's definitely not acceptable. From a moral point of view and from an environmental point of view. So there are limits in what we can do, and we should respect that. That's why it's that duality between a vision and accepting that there's principles for achieving that. The optimist stance has been well researched, and Kahneman, he's a Nobel Prize winner, has indicated that optimists have in general more resilience, and they have stronger immune systems, and they also live longer than the more reality-orientated people. And optimism also protects us from this tendency that we focus more on our fears on what we're going to lose than focusing on what we're going to gain. And of course, the moment you are focusing your energies on what you're going to gain, that's propelling you. So, first point then on leadership is that it matters, it makes a difference, but everything doesn't go. There is a way of doing things, and that way of doing things is then in this positive mindset. Why is this positive mindset important? Because it is life-giving. And if you look at nature, all plants grow towards light. And what we as leaders need to do is to create that light for people. And positive information is also energizing. On the opposite of that is one negative experience. You need 5 to 7 positive experience to neutralize one negative experience. So it is in our own self-interest to ensure that we don't dwell on the negative side and dwell on creating things with negative effects, because that's going to neutralize all our influence. So the focus is on flourishing outcomes, so therefore the standard is a high standard. It's not about just meeting the bar, it is about exceeding the norm. That's what positiveness is about. It's about strength, it's about optimism, it's about supportive, and it's about focus on virtuousness, the best that we as human beings can be. And that sets us up then for a positive result which exceeds the norm by far. And I want to illustrate it to you in the following slide. On an individual level, with this mindset, we are not focusing just to be healthy. We are focusing to have vitality and to have flow from a physical and psychological point of view. Because all the research are showing to us that the moment you have flow, the moment that you are in that zone where you are performing optimally, you are putting yourself in a position to do miracles. And that's what we're doing. On an organizational level, it isn't just about being profitable. It is about being very generous with the profits that we create. It's not about effectiveness. It is about being excellent. It's not about just being efficient. It is about being extraordinary. Quality is not just to be reliable, but it's to be perfect, to every time create that experience. Ethics, it's not about just being ethical, it is about being benevolent. Understanding that there is a bigger purpose why we are around as businesses. In our relationship, It's not about just being helpful, it's by honoring, it's by acknowledging the other. That is how we show our real humanity and leadership. And in adaptation, it's not just about coping, it's about flourishing. And that's the abundance gaps. That's the gaps that we want to close. It's not the efficiency gaps. That's the 90-80 stuff. So I'm bringing you a very difficult message. The one is that, yes, this world is changing. But in the first instance, I'm saying that what we are aiming for, we should aim for much more. We are aiming too low. We are wishing too little for us. So that means then we have to rethink how we think about leadership. Those two things, as that it matters and that there is a specific way to think about it, and that a positive stance is an absolutely helpful stance that would propel us to exceed the norms. And then we need to sort of be much more practical also on how do we think about leading. If I say it matters how we do things, and that then brings the concept of abundance full into this view. Abundance, there's no limits to goodness. It is there all the time. You cannot touch and feel it, but you see it when you experience it. You feel it when you experience it. It's inviting and inclusive. It's about unlimited opportunities and unlimited possibilities. And it's about our faith in humanity. And that sort of remark on faith in humanity, I've quoted Gandhi on where he's sort of advising us we should not lose faith in humanity. Humanity is an ocean. If a few drops of the oceans are dirty, the ocean does not become dirty. And so many times I hear the argument, because there's a few drops, now the whole thing is like bad, negative. Of course, we as human beings are being created to do extraordinary things. But if we talk about abundance, the last sentence there is a very important qualification sentence for me. According to these researchers, abundance is not about providing everybody on the planet with a life of luxury. That's not the objective of abundance. It is rather about providing everybody on the planet with a life of possibilities. That's the idea. That's what we are aiming for. Because many times when I talk about this, then people will say, yeah, but you now think everybody needs to be like a millionaire. That's not the objective. It's about giving everybody access, everybody an opportunity. That choice on what to do with that, of course, is still an individual choice. So, secondly, about the concept of abundance, I think there are forces that is changing the world, and why I am saying we can be much more optimistic about the future that we are in general. So there are forces that is raising the potential for abundance and radical new changes in the future. And I'm going to highlight 3 of these futures for you. The first one is the do-it-yourself revolution, where do-it-yourselfers can accomplish what was once the sole domain of large corporations or governments. And I will come later to that again, but previously satellites could only be put into orbit by big corporations and by governments. Now we have multiple examples of individuals who are doing that. So the do-it-yourself movement is creating a capacity that was never there before. and where individuals in their individual capacities now got the abilities to do things that was previously the sole domain of governments and of large corporations. Now that's empowering. And I will come back to that. High-tech revolutions where techno-philanthropists solve global abundance-related challenges. So there we have the Gates of the world and the multi-billionaires of the world who are now openly saying, we want to give at least half of our wealth for good causes. And therefore, there are now more money being spent on AIDS research, on pneumonia, and on malaria than ever before. So all those intractable problems that we didn't find enough commercial money to be researched on, they are now funded. So there are money available in the world today to do things that was never possible in the previous decades. And then lastly, of course, the rising billion who connect to the global economy through the internet, microfinance, and wireless communication technologies. So the internet is just opening up and bringing new possibilities to people at the bottom of the pyramid in unexpected ways. And of course, this device is part of that revolution. So small scale farmers in Ethiopia, when they produce, they can now connect to a global market and see where's the price is the best, and they can deliver their produce onto those markets. No middleman, no people sort of getting into that value chain, but through the empowerment of information on their phone, they can do that. Of course, better predictions on rain, better support on what type of produce to plant, that all comes available through this information abundance. So this is three forces that is working and creating a context where we can do miracles. Putting that in further on an abundance perspective for leadership comes to the place where we then acknowledge that leadership isn't only for a super club or for gifted individuals or for people on an executive floor. To have organization success, you have to have many collaborators, each doing their part in the system to produce on shared ideals. That means that leadership needs to be a distributed capacity, a widely distributed capacity in any environment. And there would always be people swimming in front and people who would be swimming behind, and that means paradoxically we are both leaders and followers in different situations. And the implication is that we are all leaders and followers at the same time. But there's one important difference. We need to make a conscious choice whether we're going to be a leader. So you can lead from anywhere, you don't need a position to lead. Leadership is how you show up, how you present yourself, and how you interact. And in that way, anybody can be a leader from his or her own personal position and in every situation. But that's a choice. What we also know that requires ongoing skills building, and that there are a set of barriers, and I will talk a little bit about that. So what is this leadership then about? It's all about impact. It's not about my intent, it's not what I want, it's all about the impact, it's all about influence. and that capability to influence positively and to leave people in every interaction and in every situation in a better way. It's also a team activity, it never happens on its own, and there are three things that's essential in any leadership situation: my voice, my presence, and my power. So let's talk about my voice. If I'm a leader, people know what I stand for. And I speak out against things that is not within my moral code. The problem today in South Africa is that we have too many bystanders who are silent and too little people who are outspokenly saying, this is right and this is wrong. Putting people through a standard in education when you have 40% average in nowhere in the world has been accepted as a pass rate. We cannot accept that as a standard. And of course, all the other ills that we know that's in the society. So, your voice as a leader, as a community member, as a business person, that's what societies needs. And that's what personal leadership of a positive impact from one perspective means. But we cannot just sit and hide in our houses or behind our big walls or in our smart cars or wherever. We need to be out there in the forefront. So presence, that makes leadership a reality, and that means living with people all the time that you lead. Being there for them in good and bad times. And that makes leadership not a theoretical, just thinking thing, but an absolute doing thing. And this old thing of, oh, I'm a leader, I don't do that, it's gone. So if we need to set up this room, I was very impressed this morning that Kulani was here to sort of make a contribution in setting up the job to be done. We all do it. That doesn't mean the leader needs to do that all the time. Of course, we are a team, and we should also utilize the best of each team members, the strength of each. And then leadership is always about power, and it is how I use the power that I have. The fact that you are sitting here this morning, I can absolutely declare that you are all very powerful. The question is, what do you use that power for? And leaders in abundance perspective use their power to empower others. And they use their power for others, to make others stronger. They use it with others to make the collective stronger. But they never use power over others. Because the moment that is happening, people are resisting. Because people will naturally resist instructions and control. But they will happily go into a direction where there is agreement on this is the best thing that we now need to do in this circumstances. And of course, they will willingly execute everything that they have participated in. So our job as leaders is to use our convening power to get people together, to start interacting and to start talking. Because in that moment of co-creation, you are setting the conditions for mobilizing people onto a campaign, a landscape, a project that we all agree on that that's the right thing to do. So, in summary then, it is about leading, it's about giving directions, it is about being inspirational, it is about using the collective wisdom of people to always think about the possibilities that we have. and that we can mine more. And it is about that presence that makes a difference for us. So what do successful leaders then do? The first one is this thing that the ability to become comfortable with uncertainty and ambiguity turns out to be one of the strongest predictors of success in business. Now, how uncomfortable this message of this turbulence and this VUCA world is. This research is showing on where they followed the careers of MBA students over a period of time. Those who've got this ability to work positively with the uncertainty. We cannot fight the uncertainty. We can just embrace this as reality and say, well, in this uncertainty, what possibilities is in this uncertainty? And so that's the first thing. The other thing that successful leaders do is that they don't have one style. They've got a variety of styles for different situations, different approaches. And the analogy that's being used here is golf clubs, different golf clubs for different strokes for different people. So it's not this one style all the time. It depends on what is needed for that situation. Where does that come from? It comes from believing in what you are doing is the right thing. If, of course, your values are solid. Because if you are doing the right thing for the collective, then nobody will sort of disagree. Yes, they will disagree on the how, but the what will always be very clear. So a variety of styles, and if you sort of just dig into one style, that is a non-optimal position. And then directly on the skills building and the capacities, it's about self-awareness, it's about self-regulation, it's about motivation, it's about empathy, and it's about social skills. And you would see that each of those have got very practical implications in terms of our leadership and behavior. I think one for me, apart from self-awareness that I've spoken about, is that one of self-regulation, to sort of not lose your cool in situations, and to be stable in very, very difficult circumstances. So directly then, there are the companies Procter & Gamble, Mahindra, Tata Group, PepsiCo, Norvitas, IBM, South Korea, and the Brazilian bank, Ross Cantor. Her research, what is it showing? First off, she's saying that great companies identify something larger than transactions to provide purpose and meaning. I think that's a very fundamental thing when we think about business. Large or small, the purpose of the business cannot be to make money. Great companies work to make money, but in their choice of how to do so, they consider whether they are building enduring institutions. As a result, they invest in the future while being aware of the needs of the people and of society. By contrast, great companies use a different operating logic. They believe that business is an intrinsic part of society, and like the family and government and religion, has been one of the pillars for centuries. So business as an integral part of society with a higher purpose. Then there's 6 things that these successful leaders and companies are focusing on: a common purpose, a long-term focus, and emotional engagement between the company and its employees, an absolute focus on innovation, partnering with the public and solving larger societal problems, and then focusing on self-organization. And then the middle ones there, they place a big focus on the self-determination, where the individuals are accepted as adults who can make informed decisions, and what the role of the organization is to create those opportunities for them. And then, of course, this is built on the foundation of a purpose and values which serve as a buffer against uncertainty and change. So the decisions that we make is being viewed in the light of our vision and the values that we stand for. Okay, very specifically in the context of South Africa, my opinion is the following are enabling mental models for strategic leadership in South Africa. The first one is we need to link into the global challenges, and the Millennium Development Goals are those link. If you don't know about the Millennium Development Goals, please go and read about that and think about how your organization can make a contribution. The second one is that capitalism as a mechanism for trading needs to create shared value for the multiple stakeholders and the larger environment, and it cannot be only at a value creation level for investors only. There is only one standard, and that's a global standard. So there's no such thing as a South African standard or an African standard. There is one standard, and it's a global standard, and that's where we should aspire and benchmark ourselves against. There is something like the Global Compact, which sets out a moral base for businesses to conduct themselves. 10 standards. It's not a lot of money to sign up for that. Any company who wants to be reputable, in my mind, needs to be a signature to that Global Compact, and in South Africa we've got companies that have done that, and of course globally. And then supportive of the execution of national priorities. In South Africa we have the National Development Plan. It's the best plan that we're ever going to have on a national level, and the question is how at the local level can I link to that plan and the 9 focus areas that's in that plan. So what are the big shifts? From managers to leaders, and this research are saying there are 7 big shifts. The one is from specialist to generalist. So I have a competency in a very specific area, but also then to move to a more generalist position and see things from a wider perspective. From an analyst to an integrator, always focusing on the detail of the data, but also at the same time focusing on the integration of the data in a synthesis to allow a wider view. From being a tactician to a strategist, so the tactics of being successful, where the strategist clearly implies in this case a more longer term view. From a big bricklayer to an architect, to yes, the bricklaying activity is important, but to also have at the same time a bigger vision of what am I creating? Am I just building a house, or am I building a castle or a cathedral? Problem solver or an agenda setter. So that voice, to find our leadership voice and also contribute to setting the agenda. Not only to contributing things, but also to set the agenda for what we should focus on. And then, of course, warrior to diplomat. The leadership role is one of a diplomat. It is the one of solving conflicts, not the one of creating conflicts. And it is finding that personal courage to go the extra mile, to give the hand, and to step into the space of conflict and say, what can we do to resolve that? and the supporting cast member to a lead role, which means, yes, if everybody is a leader, that means that from time to time the lights will shine on us, and to be comfortable with that, and to step into that role when that is needed, and not always to say, no, but that's not for me, that I cannot do, and to overcome those fears and things that keeps us from doing great things. And of course, where does that start? With the voice in our head that tells us that we cannot do things. That also implies that we need to overcome the following myths, and this is this seduction of a hero leader as this main view that we have of leadership. Leadership comes in many shapes and forms, and leaders are introverts and extroverts. Leaders lead from the back and from the front. Leaders can be male and female. All of those things, leaders can be seen from an abundant perspective, and are showing up in an abundant perspective. That leadership power is about me, of course it's just the opposite, and my ability to use my power to the benefit of others. Leadership is about the position, so now that I've reached this position, it is then about me being served by others. It's just the opposite. To be in the position of leadership implies to be of service to others. Leadership is only about results. No, it's not about the results only. It's also about how you do create those results. So the way that you are doing things is just as important as achieving the results. And leadership is just another task. No, leadership isn't just like an thing in my inbox. Leadership is who I am every minute of the day, and leadership is how I present myself as part of a solution in every situation. And leadership only deals with the positive things in life. Difficult things happen to us, and our ability to have the resilience to stand up and do different things, that's what is required from us. Okay, in conclusion, I want to leave you with a few ideas of, well, if that's how the world is changing, if this is the thinking that's required, if leadership is essential in that, well, what can I now do? How is this world presenting new possibilities for me? Well, first I want to then show to you that there's a new pattern of entrepreneurship emerging. And here, the value chain of that business is being explained. You rent a desk in a shared office. You don't have to own the building. Well, you don't have to own anything. You can rent everything. And just remember on entrepreneurship stories, more and more I come to this conclusion that if you want to be a successful IT entrepreneur, you have to start your business in the garage. So humble beginnings, that's the story. You don't have to fly high from the beginning. Incorporate online in Libya, so you can trade from different areas. So if you want to register a ship, and in the shipping business, Liberia apparently is the cheapest and the easiest to do business in. So the world is our playground, and we can start businesses in multiple territories. Funding, of course, always the Achilles heel for businesses. New ways of fundraising called crowdsourcing. And people who will give you money if your business case is sellable. And more I hear this, that it isn't about a lack of financing, it's a lack of entrepreneurs who can build a credible business case. So different ways of raising funds, and of course you also need to understand in terms of the big corporation, there is a question of to be listed, whether that is the end goal. Because more and more companies delist, and we also saw many companies that's never listed. And even in developed economies like Germany, the percentage of large corporations that's listed is markedly lower than in other territories. So, if you need to specialist knowledge to be deployed in your business, you hire them online. You get the best in the world to do whatever you want them to do. And of course, if you've got high aspirations to put something in the air, you go to Alibaba. It's the biggest wholesaler in the world. And of course, if you want your products and services to be known to the world, you need to be registered as a vendor on Alibaba. Then of course, we don't have to go to the local bank in these days anymore to get the money. You can set up electronic payment mechanisms, and even in South Africa that's becoming much more ubiquitous. And this last week I've seen new devices coming out where you can receive your payments electronically. And of course you need to get your goods to the customer, but you don't have to leave your office to organize that. You can contract a shipping company or a transport company or whatever need you have to get your product or solution to the end user. So this is a new pattern. It wasn't available for us. But then there's also new possibilities. So 3D printing, where we can now replicate everything at a fraction of the cost. And here on the left-hand side, it's that maker movement. That thing that I've talked about, where do-it-yourselfers are now coming together more than ever before and doing things locally. But how? By connecting into a global network. And there's this in June in Washington, where these people have come together, and if you Google maker movement, you would see that this is all about creating local manufacturing, small-scale, efficient production. And all of those things were never previously available to us. And then, of course, local fabrication shops. So when I've heard this, people were talking about, well, every library in communities becoming a small-scale manufacturing based on the technology that is becoming available in a very accessible way. Then, of course, the mantra is that we never do these things alone. We work in a network. We have a support structure. That support structure is not only local, but that support structure is global. And collaborative ways in finding partners, customers, and solutions, that's part of the new possibilities that we have. So in summary, we know that change is ahead. And the only viable strategy for that is adaptation. So it's about entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship. Intrapreneurship meaning then in big companies, in reinventing themselves. Entrepreneurship, creating micro, small and medium enterprises. And of course that's dependent on the idea. And the possibilities for ideas are just growing every day. And many of those possibilities are related to the internet. Products and services, it's not the one or the other, it's global and local. The digital economy with all its different facets, absolutely part of that adaptation. And then it's about collaboration across boundaries. And it is about not being caught up in this thinking of impossibility, but all the time in this positive leadership thinking of what is possible, what are the opportunities. And there you see that fish making that jump, which is an impossible jump. That's what we are aiming for, doing the impossible. That should be our aim. That means, from a strategic point of view, continuous engagement, continuous dialogue, always with a plan that we have, and the more we talk, our talk and our reality will become more closer to each other. So different cycles, different periods, an ongoing process. There's never a start, there's never an end game, and this is just a continuous conversation about what will we aspire and what will we do to close the gaps all the time. But we can choose to be great. Greatness comes with recognition that your potential is limited only by how you choose, how you use your freedom, how resolute you are, how persistent you are, and that ensured by our attitude. So this is all in the end about our attitude. And we are all free to choose our attitude. So Adrian Gore, one of my favorite entrepreneurs in South Africa, is on record saying, positiveness and optimism are the fuel and fundamental attributes of leadership. And of course, he's setting a blazing example for us by reinventing the area that his business is focusing on all the time and coming up with innovative new solutions for a very stable environment. So, in conclusion, that's what I want to talk to you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. We can now go into some questions, but lastly I want to leave you, I will put out the invitations. We have a joint research project with University of Western Cape on the digital economy and skills and requirements for the digital economy. And we've surveyed 82 large corporations in South Africa, and I think this is the 4th of August. We're going to launch this report and share this results, and it would sort of give us a benchmark, an indication of how ready are businesses in general to embrace the opportunities associated with this new digital world that we are exposed to. Thank you very much for the time. Good luck with your business, and let's have some interaction. Thank you.